Hey there friendos, Newbornkilik here, welcoming you back to another awesome Zelda-related video. Now today, we're going to be taking a very early game look at the awesome Link's Awakening for Switch. Now, originally I kind of slept on this game. I wasn't really gonna pick it up, on launch. I might wait for, a used copy or something, pick one up at a GameStop, etc, etc. However, Zara was set on getting this game, and I gotta say, I'm actually really glad that we did. First off, we're going to go over the things that I am so far enjoying about the game. Bear in mind, I've only played about 2 temples in. Of course, that is very slow progress, but we're actually playing for the gameplay channel. Zara and I are playing through that Link's Awakening for the first time, so we're having a good time over there. Go check that out. Go do it. So of course, we'll be going over the things that I do enjoy so far about the game, the things that I'm a little bit more questionable about, and then things that are basically preferences about the game that maybe I dislike, but someone else, might actually rather like, or things that I like, but another person may not like. Without any further ado, let's get into it. So what so far do I really like about Link's Awakening for the Switch? Well, it's an immediate nostalgia trip. It took me right back, honestly. I haven't actually played any of the Link's Awakening games, either the original or the DX version, but that didn't really stop me from getting, Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons vibes from it. Just seeing Rock's Feather again immediately took me way back. There are some things about it that people may not enjoy, but that I actually find kind of charming, but because I played them in the older games, if that makes any sense. Think about A Link to the Past. When you get a little bit too close to a hole, the hole you kind of slip into the hole. I can't really do much about this right now. So
no, you cannot.
That happens in this game a lot. I find that very charming. I know some people are probably going to find that really annoying, but it just kind of takes me back. The days when I used to get very upset at that as a kid. You fall into the hole with your last heart. You were plenty far away from that hole, but hey, whatever. Overall, it is roughly what you would expect from a remake of Link's Awakening, or at least I would assume it's not terribly different from the original game. I'm guessing there's probably some improvements made, here or there, but overall it is a top-down Zelda in essence, which is very nice. The levels seem alright. I mean, they're top-down Zelda. What do you expect? You enter a chamber, you clear it out, and you move on to the next one. It's the same kind of dungeon crawling that you've grown to know and love. Honestly, I would say the game is just a little challenging. Not necessarily in the fact that, the enemies are terribly difficult to dodge. It's just that the consumable items, at least so far in the first 2 levels, don't really seem to come around very often. It's very possible that I may just be missing them, but when you get done playing, Ocarina of Time, where you can just smash a pot and get 20 hearts out of that one pot. Exaggeration, of course, but you get what I'm trying to say. When you don't have pots around all over the place, or, grass to cut in the middle of the dungeon to replenish your consumables, it can be a little bit more difficult on those longer trips. With that said, honestly, going back to restock on consumables isn't that bad. Dying also is not too terribly bad either. Obviously, you wanna avoid the death, but hey, at least in the first 2 dungeons, there are little shortcuts back to the beginning. In the first 2 dungeons, there's one little wall that'll kind of take you up and let you skip a large portion of the dungeon. Then, of course, after you defeat the mini-boss, you do still have that teleport, which is rather nice and does cut down on some of the monotony. Now, I cannot say whether that was a thing in the original game. I'm left to assume that it probably was, but I do not know. This is more of a new perspective on the game, not necessarily trying to, compare it to the old one. Just how does this game stand out on its own? So far, I've noticed a bit of a trend. I'm assuming it's going to carry on to the rest of the game, and if it does, that's perfect. I think that'll be really great. The bosses and the mini-bosses tend to mix up their behavior when they're low on health. Now, of course, this could be expanded on further. Maybe at half health, they start doing things a little bit different. And then at a quarter health, they start doing something a little bit more different, on top of how different the first time was. Mix things up a little bit, make the boss fights a little less static. Just this one little idea of the bosses doing something just a little bit different. Very slight spoiler warning, but honestly, it's not so bad. When you're fighting the Moblin boss in the encampment to get the Chain Chomp back, the first handful of hits, he just kind of runs into the wall, no problem, doesn't really matter when you move. He throws spears as well, but hey, you can just block those, no problem. Where things get mixed up is at the end, if you move too early, he actually stops. This totally threw me for a loop, honestly. I just was not expecting him to change up his behaviors. Of course, now that I know at some point during the fight he's going to mix up his behaviors a little bit, I can kind of anticipate that, but still, it's a nice little cherry on the top of the cake. And like I said before, it goes pretty far in making these boss fights a little bit more dynamic. So now we get into the unfortunate part of the video, and these are the things about Link's Awakening for the Switch that I don't really care for. First off, we all know there's frame drops. That's just part of the game at this point. I don't even know if they really would be able to fix it. However, I am playing the digital version and I have it saved to my actual Switch, not on an SD card, so my experience is a little bit better than some of the people who might be playing on the physical cartridge or off of their SD card. Honestly, the frame drops are not quite as bad for me, but there's definitely still there, and when you're talking about a company like Nintendo, who is kind of this knight in shining armor when it comes to, they don't have microtransactions in their game. You're not buying a red dot, they're not EA, they're not Activision or anything like that. This is a little concerning, honestly. You expect polish from a AAA company, and unfortunately, as gamers, we've basically kind of been getting the short end of the stick on that one, And that's unfortunate. Nintendo needs to be, good guy Nintendo. They need to keep, giving us great products. And I'm not saying that these frame drops are necessarily, the biggest thing in the world. The game is still definitely playable, but the fact of the matter is, it is an imperfection and it has to be, looked at critically. Personally, I noticed right away whenever there were frame drops. Of course, I'm used to playing on a gaming monitor at 144 Hz, so 60 FPS is still, looks pretty good, but anything below that, my eyes basically burn out of their sockets. The second thing that I'm not terribly a fan of is this trendy game thing. I'm really expecting for these difficult platforms in the back. I managed to get both of these, by the way. They're just consumable refills. One is a new shield, which I already had a shield. I could just go and buy a new shield from the shop. That's about 10 paces to the north. Why is the shield here? I figured it was like a shield upgrade, like a permanent thing. That's why I got it. And as for the bag, I assumed the same thing. I figured it was an upgrade. It was just 10 magic powder. Exceedingly disappointing. There was one more thing that gave me a little bit of cause for concern, and that would be the mini-boss of the first area. This guy is obviously here, to teach us to utilize the jumping, and as far as a design for a boss, I think it's very interesting. How in this top-down environment can we utilize a jump so that the player is punished if they don't jump? And sure enough, they managed to do it. He rolls his little thing along the floor and you get hurt by it. My problem comes with once he's going to reposition himself behind again. I have absolutely no idea what triggers him to go one way or the other. I'm not going to include this necessarily as the bad part, just because it could be that I'm missing something as to which way he's going to go. And I could not for the life of me figure out what made him go up or down, if there's a way for me to manipulate it. Because if there was, easy mode, if he follows a pattern or something, that's perfectly fine too. So again, I'm not necessarily going to rate the game critically here, because this could have been my error. Even though it is in the things I didn't like section, I guess it's a pretty good segue into the neutral things. We'll go ahead and count that one as a neutral thing, because it is very possible I'm just an idiot. Another thing so far that's kind of a neutral point is the fact that if you're even roughly close to a hole, the hole will suck you into it. It's like each of these are like little black holes, and these circular holes are the most touchy-feely things on the planet. Seriously, I'm vaguely on that tile, but I shouldn't really be falling in. Now, as I said at the beginning of the video, I actually rather like this mechanic. I think it's kind of funny. It just creates funny situations. Now, should it be that way? I don't know. But it's also a very retro thing, and I just kind of accepted it. Like I said, it immediately took me back, so I kind of like the fact that it's there. I mean, there should be some penalty for getting too close to a hole. Of course, the alternative is either have holes that are basically useless, or have a hole that even if you get roughly near it, you fall in, so this kind of dragging mechanic is to simulate you like slipping and stuff. Now, of course, because these are my early thoughts in the game, I can't really give, a review or a final score of the thing. After all, I could get to the final level and find out that I hate it all of a sudden. I really don't think that that's going to happen, but so far, I'm rather enjoying the game. Hashtag not sponsored. Hashtag but would be sponsored. Get on it, Nintendo. Hey, I noticed you made it to the end of the video. Thanks, appreciate that. While you're here, there's that big old red bar down there. Why don't you go ahead and click that until it says subscribed. If it says subscribed, well done. I applaud you. You've already completed the task. In all seriousness, liking the video and subscribing, hitting the bell to turn on notifications or whatever does help me out an awful lot. Also lets me know if you enjoyed this kind of content and if I should do more of it. As I mentioned before, Zara and I are actually doing a playthrough of this game over on the gameplay channel, Newbornkilik Plays. Anyway, thank you yet again. I'm Newbornkilik and I will see you in the next one. I'm out.